Hey guys, Dib the Awesome here to give you yet another Monster Legends Guides. We talk about monsters' moves, rune sets, partners, all that jazz. Today we are taking a look at the life of BorJork, the orc. He is a nature attacker that is coming up soon. I don't know when, I don't know what event he'll be in for. But he's just coming. It's an event. I don't know what event he'll be in. I don't know if he's even he's probably, you know what, odds are he'll probably be a premier monster for this month. Odds are, I'm just assuming that. Really good nature attacker as far as I'm concerned. Nice bursty damage. That's just just the early highlights for this video. And he does apply a new status effect we have not seen before. So we're going to talk about it today. So for base power, 3,608. This thing hits like a truck, so you can imagine how hard it hits at later levels. So if this was like 115 right now, obviously that would scale. Let's look at that real quick. 4,100, a whopping 4,100. That's what I said once. I said it twice. Bam. Lots and lots of base damage. Really, really, really good. Life 31,366. This is a really, really good life. Allows you to pretty much run any kind of rune build you really want. Rainbow build, run it. You can run it. Smile on the face. If you want to go for more, it's fast damage, 2 speeds and a strength, can do it. I don't know if for some odd reasons, if you wanted to run this support, you can do it. He does have the base stats that pretty much allow him to do whatever he wants. For speed, he does have a whopping 3,421. This is basically the slowest acceptable denier speed anyone is willing to take. It just is. This is the base speed. This is TD speed. This is frostbite speed. This is the speed. It is acceptable. Though he doesn't really have any denier skill, so you don't really want to run him as a denier. He has like one single target skill, but that's just about it. Alright, for trait, he actually also has a new trait in the game. I said he had a new status, he brought a new status effect to a table. This has also a new trait called Orc. I do believe Shork also had this trait, but it's kind of bugged. He has like Hardened at the moment. They're going to fix that later. But for right now, he's the first one to have this, or he will be the first one to have this, unless they fix Shork first. Whatever the two. Basically, it's upgraded Hardened. It's basically a 5% more. All status effects have a 25 less accuracy against it. So I'm assuming they're going to make more orc monsters and slap this trait on them. As far as I'm concerned, this is just basically... think of this as like ice cream. It's already ice cream with a new topping, but it's, the same as another topping. You could say it's like cookie dough with more cookie in it, and that sounds weird. But it's got extra stuff in it, or maybe like chocolate chips and sprinkles, whatever you want to add for that second ingredient for the cookie dough. It's now in there. That's my point. It's just slightly better than Hardened. Nonetheless, it's a really good trait to have, especially in this current meta where we're getting a bunch of crazy status effects. And it's just better just not to get any at all than actually just get hit with what the opponent brings to counter you. At least in terms, at least I will say you should have at least Hardened on your damage dealer. That seems to be the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to always have like your attacker on defense have Hardened or tough or whatever have you, because they are your bursty damage. So as long as they get their turn in, they're going to do essentially a good portion of damage to your enemy if they don't get denied. So this is a really nice trait to have, especially for a damage dealer. So this is really good for him. That's what's going for him. It's a really nice monster. We're going to explore the rest of his kit to see if you guys think he's extremely good. So for his ultimate, we have Orc's Dance. For some reason, it's... You wouldn't think this guy would dance, but watch, he like busts out a disco ball and goes, That's ridiculous. That would be ridiculous. I want it. Watch upcoming new monster, Dance Jork, or Jork. This is a AoE. Well, no, it's not an AoE. It's a single target damage scale. To one enemy, moderate. Oh, okay, so here's the thing. Here's the catch. So it does 80 damage to a single person, but then sub damage to everybody else, so moderate damage, so probably like a 40 damage to everybody else on the field, and it also makes them bleed. This is a really decent ultimate, I will say, for a damage dealer. If you're going support, it's not going to be the most prettiest damage, but I do recommend running him damage, or just like extra, or you can run him as your extra guy too. Then you'll see some reasonable numbers. What I mean by extra guy is he's basically the guy that's not squishy, that can also do supporting and all the other things you want, you know, your other guy to do. Is essentially the extra guy is a really important role. It usually is filled by, you know, again, the guy you just wanted to bring for tankage, whatever have you, and or supports like Ukaduma and Varv, healers, double buffers, totem, that kind of role. So this is a good AoE. I will say this will crush any single target, you know, and you got really decent runes on it. You're gonna crush it. You're gonna crush anything. That's the thing that's single targeted right now. Probably gonna get crushed. 80 damage is a lot to stomach. I mean, like in terms of a base damage scale, that's a lot of damage to that one specific person. Are there better alts that do insane amount of damage? Yes. But this is a good single target outer and just, you know, moderate damage to everything else. It gets the job done. Green Blood. This is a really interesting self skill that everybody is loving. Applies regeneration and stamina regeneration to itself. I hope all the orcs get this ability. I don't know if Shork got this ability, but I hope all the orcs get this ability because it's a neat ability. I wouldn't mind if it was just an exclusive skill too for like all orcs. I wouldn't mind that at all. That would be cool. That would be what the cool kids say, lit. Would be very lit. Green Blood is a very good supportive skill. You should run this just to keep self-sustain on BorJork. So extra guy build especially can take advantage of this, you know, this move. Increased regeneration. It's not really going to affect by the stamina regen, but at least you'll have longevity. You'll be able to live long enough to actually take advantage of this setup, which is nice. This is an extremely good skill. You might want to consider running it for self-survivability. You don't have to necessarily run it if you already run a support that does all this, like Invarv. If you just want to run something like Invarv, or if you already use a support that always just sets us up turn 1 or turn 2, that's fine. You don't have to run it. But, you know, I think you should run it. It keeps him sustained, and it works with his DOTs. It will make him hard to kill. I will say if you fought this full rank, have fun dealing with that. Costs like no stamina. The only, you know, shot to the need to running this skill, though, is the 4-turn cooldown. Just mind that. Run skills that would best cooperate with this cost, and you'll be good. Strange Sword. You know, usually we don't talk about skills in skill groups 1, but I think we can talk about these two because at the moment, in terms of 50% skills landing, ever since there's like a bug where all the 50% chance skills are landing guaranteed. So some of the recent monsters, such as the Keeper, not the Keeper, the Dungeon Master, I think it's called, really good at the moment with quite a few, you know, skills. Quite a few that apply double effects, as well. Oh, it has a 50% chance, but again, it's currently at 100%, so they're really good. You may choose to run the skill. To be honest, the other AoE is no really different. It's got like 10 more damage and another cooldown turn, so like 2. It's a 2-turn cooldown, 40 damage. AoE, personally, I think you should just run that because at some point they're going to fix the 50% chance things, I feel. I don't think you should really run the skill. I don't think it's all that good. You can run it at the moment, but at some point they're going to change it, the 50% chance thing. At some point, I don't know when, but when they do, just change it. It's just a good idea. Better base damage, what have you. I Came to Fight removes all negative status effects from itself, applies nature weakness and daze to all enemies. So basically, if you're currently on fire, bleeding, poisoned, and just got all the DOTs in the world, this cleans you up. And it also applies nature weakness and daze to all enemies. So essentially, you do 50% more damage to everyone, but it does no setup damage. I will say this doesn't really do any initial damage. so it might be turned off not to run the skill. I will say some sets can run this skill, not all of them. Is this a good skill? It's good for situations. I would say this is really good for situations where you're just drenched in DOT. But you do have the, you had the life regen, set up, and you've soaked up most of the damage you would have, taken. But in most case scenarios, it's probably not the best thing in the world to run. Again, unless it's your extra guy monster. If he's your support, by all means, run it. You can run this with quite a few other nature attackers that I don't know if they do as much as BorJork, but with this, you'll personally do the amount of damage. If he's not running full damage, this move will cover that, because all of the rest of his main damage moves are nature-based skills. They just are. He has no special damage, and with this, it doesn't even matter. So I will say this is a good move. In the case of the event, you're stuck with another nature monster, like it's a 1v1 fight, and you're dealing with Ulysses. Running this skill would get you the victory. It just will. Doing not very effective damage is highly annoying, and to have a skill that pretty much sets you good is good. And the base damage from his skills are good to begin with, so I will say this move isn't as bad as it looks. It looks bad, but it isn't 100% bad. It's good for 1v1 situations where you're dealing with another nature monster. It's a good idea if you want to run it. I'm saying guaranteed run it, but run it at your own disclosure, and you could possibly get a clutch win out of it. Blade Roots deals moderate nature damage to all enemies, applies bleed to all enemies, requires a cooldown. Run this skill. It is your base AoE. It is your natural AoE. This is where all your AoE damage comes from. It also applies bleeding for 3 turns. Really decent DOT. Not many monsters are immune to bleed. If any, it's Abomination and Celestial monsters. So there's like 6. I think there's like either 6 or 7 in total monsters at the moment that are immune to bleed. Several of them are popular, mostly the Abomination monsters specifically. Joustar and Yelitri are the 2 big boys that are really, really popular. And McBlood too, I believe, is an Abomination. And the... I forgot what the other monster was. It's like the other creeper monster. They did more Abomination monsters, and there was like one that was dark, and I believe he has. I'm not talking about McBlood. I'm talking about the other one that have Abomination. But again, not many monsters have immune to bleed, so it's a good DOT. I love bleed. It's one of my favorite status effects in the game. Do run this skill. AoE damage plus bleed. It's good for any build. Wild Slash deals heavy nature damage to one enemy, 50% chance of applying bleed to one enemy. This is his only spammable skill. You might want to consider running it. We're getting a lot of monsters nowadays that proc all your cooldowns, set them, and that's not fun. So to have at least some kind of damaging skill is very relevant to you, and it's not all that much stamina. It's only a 25 stamina costing skill. I would run this in the case of the event you run into something that activates your cooldowns. So basically a defensive one. If you're running a defensive BorJork, this is a good idea to run. It gives you things to do while you're waiting for your other cooldowns. War! So this is the most interesting skill in his kit. Is the new kind of status effect here. Applies damage boost to all allies, applies double damage, and Winged Hater. Bam! New status effect right there. Winged Hater to all allies. Basically, when you have this on, you do 200 against winged monsters. So you do 200% more damage to winged monsters. Notice that it's 200%. Like the numbers, like is that like the double damage? That's quad damage, and you have double damage on you right now. That's crazy. The amount of damage is nuts. And damage boost too. I think, to be honest, I think BorJork gets the double damage and everyone else gets the damage boost plus Winged Hater. But I think even at that point, I don't think it matters if he got the bigger piece of the meat because the meat was huge to begin with. like just imagine like a giant turkey. He got a giant leg, but there's still a giant turkey there. Just like, I know that's a weird analogy, but you get my point. There is still plenty left. And The damage, my boys, it's ridiculous. Now, this only applies to the winged family, and the winged family isn't exactly the best book in the game at the moment. The winged book is actually the worst book, save for a handful. You know, obviously the recent ones. You know, recent ones don't even have a lot of chapters in it. But the wing, in terms of selection in the wing book, it's pretty trash. Just like a handful of really decent monsters. That's it. The rest are either they do all right, but they suffer from old age. You know, there's newer monsters now that just completely counter them. And or just the stats have just gone. You know, it's just yeah, yeah. This again handful. But you will be doing 200 against those monsters, and that they will die. Invarv dies, Kalik dies, Gerald Nishon for sure dead. The damage boost enough was probably enough to kill him, and now he's 4 times as dead. To have a 200 damage boost against any given monster is nuts. That's double damage. Like double damage is 100% damage. Damage boost is 50% to do 300% more damage. That's crazy, and it's an AOE skill. That's stupid. That's disgusting. So up the wall, crazy damage, specifically to winged monsters. Now, how is this on a regular basis? Let's pretend like if you're not even fighting winged monsters. Winged monsters are the only real popular, I will say, in terms of the arena. The most common one you will ever see is Samuel. So this is a good Samuel killer right here. This monster right here, one of the best Samuel killers in the game. And he's not even a light monster. He's not even a light attacker, and he's the best answer to Samuel. Period. To do quad damage, just triple, 300% more damage to the man. He will not live. That's way too much damage. Really good damage boost. I can see people nerfing this. This will probably be a self skill. I can't imagine this being an AOE. That's crazy. That's too much damage boost. It just is. So I will say this is a good arena monster. I will just straight up say that right away. If you're playing the multiplayer arena, straight up, really good monster. No way it's not. If you use this as your support, you apply this to your damage dealer, they're golden. They're gonna do so much damage to Samuel. Samuel won't even know which way to look because he whacked him so hard. And upside the noggin, it's ridiculous. So I will say this. While this is a good damage skill, I will say you might want to run this if you're running extra guy BorJork. And I think that's his best place at the moment. So you should probably run him as your extra guy, as your support, as your wingman, as your wingman. It's kind of ironic. Yeah, so he's your wingman. BorJork should be your wingman in a team comp. He should not be your main damage dealer. Cruel Chop. This is a very heavy nature damage skill to one enemy. Applies bleeding to one enemy. Requires a cooldown of 1 turn, 60 damage. I actually thought this was a 2-turn cooldown. So if you're not too much of a fan of a 50 damage skill, you can run Cruel Chop. Just keep in mind, if you do get cooldowns activated upon, you won't be able to do anything. I'm just saying this for that turn though. So you're just for a turn, you're not doing any damage. Again, just you might want to run this just so you have damage. It's always nice to at least have a backup plan. This is a really good skill in case of several magic monsters that do cooldowns activated. So this is a nice skill to bring just to do quite a bit of damage to them. I will say that. This is an Orc. Deals massive nature damage to one enemy. Applies stun to one enemy. This is a 3-turn cooldown, 70 damage skill. It's a stun. I will say usually it is nice to have a stun skill. You don't ever know when you need a stun, but it is a 3-turn cooldown stun. I will say this is optional. This is for sure an optional move, and I will say this is the best bursty move. A 70 damage skill. That's ultimate damage. That is some really high-end ultimate damage. Really bursty. The problem is you're only going to use it once. So here's my personal opinion. While this is a really good damaging skill, I would recommend running Cruel Trap over it because it applies a DOT and it's 60 damage. And more importantly, it's a 1-turn cooldown versus a 3-turn. If this was 2-turn, oh no, I would straight up recommend this move. But it's a 3-turn cooldown. Take the note of that. You gotta consider what other 3 moves you're running. Odds are you'll probably be running two moves that don't do any damage and more so do a support format. So either the damage boosting skill or the weakener skill. You'll probably be doing one of those first. Running the Blades Roots, which is your 40 damage AoE. And or just running, the AoE and one of the support skills, be it War, I Came to Fight, and or Green Blood. And then you'd run Wild Slash for spammable moves just in case you get cooldowns activated. And so this is just your backup plan. This is basically your backup move. You just gotta consider your cooldowns. And most of them, for the most part, you could run it if you ran. I will say this. Okay, here's the thing. If you run Wild Slash, you can run This Is an Orc because you have something to do. You just gotta take into account what you do in the meantime. If you get cooldowns activated, it's not gonna look pretty for you. He's not gonna get enough turns to get this back. The game's probably gonna be over by the time he gets his move back, and or if you're just fighting something really, really tanky like Cryotan or Oros. So again, just mind that. This is his burstiest skill, used with caution. But it's also his highest cooldown. So again, used with caution. So what do I actually recommend you run? I will say at the moment, one, War! War is an extremely good skill. As far as I'm concerned, it's one of the burstier damage boosting skills in the game. Well, it's not even triple damage. It's an insanely good move for multiplayer right now because everyone's using Samuel. All Sammy. Really good monster against the, I think was it the Light Nemesis? No, it wasn't the Light Nemesis. It's the Dark. I think it's Dark, right? Yeah, it's Dark. I think Samuel is the Dark one, yeah, because he's the enemy of Nishant. Yeah, this is a really good skill for him. You should run the skill at the moment. It is really good to dealing with Samuel. You should run Cool Chop for that lowered cooldown, really decent cooldown, extremely good damage. 60 damage is really acceptable in terms of baseline damage. It's really good, really bursty. It gets the job done while also being on a really low cooldown. I would run Wild Slash for that spammable move, and Blade Roots for the AoE damage. Now, if you don't want to run the AoE, I will say this: if you don't want to run the AoE, you don't really have to. Both of these skills cover bleeding, so you won't have to run an AoE bleed if he's not your main damage dealer. I will say that if he's not your main damage dealer, you don't have to run Blade Roots. You can run something else because he's your support, or he's your wingman. He's your wingman. So you don't have to run Blade Roots. You don't have to do that. You can run I Came to Fight. This will just basically make Wild Slash and Cruel Chop do way more damage than This Is an Orc could ever do. I will say that I will say for the last skill, you can either run Blade Roots or I Came to Fight, or you can run Green Blood. I said Green Blood was an extremely good self skill. This is another option you may run. So basically, you're running two support skills, and I will say depending. I will say at that point you would run two support skills and two single target skills. So again, at your own leisure, if you want to run an AoE, you can if you wanted to run kind of like three support. If you want to run two support skills, you can swap out one of the single targets for the AoE bleed if you wanted to. Again, I will say build this monster based on what you have available, what you need for war. I will say that's a huge thing you need to consider. Build them however you want in terms of damage at that point. I will say, and or support this. Basically, whatever you need at the moment for an extra guy, or the extra role. This guy will do the best in the extra role. I'm telling you guys right now, run him as that. You can run him as your main damage dealer too. That is totally fine. It's 100% fine. But I will say he does excel in the extra guy role just because of War at the moment. War is probably one of the better support skills in the game, if it does exactly what it says. if this skill gives damage boost plus double damage, odds are it only just gives him the double damage, but everyone else gets a damage boost plus Winged Hater. That's just crazy. That's just crazy. The damage he does. He himself, if he just got the damage boost, he would do. Well, yeah, he does 300. Alright, 300% more damage. But if he, with that added damage boost, he'd do 350 bonus damage. 300%. bonus damage. So yeah, one more time, run war for sure. For sure, one war. For sure, run cruel chop. And then everything else is up to you. I will say I'll leave that rest to you in terms of what you want to build. But me personally, I will say if I had this monster, I'd run war. I'd run green blood. I would run cruel chop, and I'd run wild slash probably. If I was using him more with my other nature monsters, I would run I came to fight. And or if I didn't really care about, okay, so let's say if I had like if I already had a bunch of stamina regen and life regen monsters, I would just run I came to fight. Let's say if I was running Plymouth, let's say if I was running Plymouth, and or a nature monster that gave AoE life regen. Right now at the moment, I think that the only one that does that while also doing damage is Plymouth. Don't quote me, don't quote me on that. But I'm just that's the extent of my remembrance. I could run I came to fight to not only just increase Plymouth's damage with his nature skills, but it also increases the spammable skill of Wild Slash and Cruel Chop. Again, just think about what your deal is, what you want him to do. But I think this is a pretty basic build for everybody, so I'm going to go for just like the basic that everyone should probably run. War, Cruel Chop, for sure. These two are for sures. And again, build whatever you want. I personally love spammable skills. I would run Wild Slash, and I would probably run Green Blood if I plan on pairing them up with things that, yeah, I'd say things like set up life regen. If I'm not running things like Invarv or anything else that does that at the moment. Invarv is really the only one I can think of at the moment that applies both life and stamina at the moment. There are obviously more. I just can't think of any more at the moment that do. Or just, bleed. Again, it totally depends on what you want. This increases the damage of his other two moves. So odds are I would probably run... I would run War, I would run Cool Chop, Wild Slash, and then it would be up in the air with Blade Roots, I Came to Fight, and or Green Blood. I know I just said I'd give you a definite build, but with this monster, again, there's two definite answers, and then whatever you want at that point. If you want to run a stun, go ahead. If you want to run spammable skill, go ahead. If you want to run I Came to Fight, go ahead. Again, it's your extra monster. Decide what you want. I would personally just have troubles with the last skill because I Came to Fight and Green Blood are extremely good skills. Odds are I'll just run Green Blood. Yeah, I'd say Green Blood. I'd say I'd want to Roar, Cruel Chop, Wild Slash, and Green Blood. I'd have life regen, stamina regen. I'd be good. Yeah, you would be totally fine because you're going to get a damage boost, and that just kind of ignores the nature, not very effective damage to begin with. So you're fine. That's a fine skill. War, Cruel Chop, Wild Slash, and Green Blood. That's the build. That's the extra guy build, at least for how I would run him in terms of monsters. Now, what other two monsters should you be running with this man? Depends on what role you give him. I will say if you run extra guy, run things that can do buffs while also dealing damage. If you're running more nature attackers, that's certainly fine. Monsters that apply nature damage but aren't nature themselves, those are also phenomenally good pairings. Phenomenally good pairings. Frostbite. Frostbite works with anybody. Work with this man. Guava juice would be insanely absurd with this man. Guava juice totally. I would run Guava with this monster. The bleed plus the poison combination, it would be too stupid. And Guava can set this man up for insane amounts of damage if they work together. Guava can set up the weakener, and this man can just go in and do a bunch of damage without having to build damage. You can run this guy the extra guy build of a life, strength, and speed, and he's fine. His damage is going to be through the roof regardless of what you do. So that's really, really neat. Yeah, that's really it for this video. I'm Nib the Awesome, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.